is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content from me, please like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click on the notifications bell if you want to see when I will post a new video. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics with respect to relationships and personal development. You can email me at the email address in the video description, and I will send you a pricing list with a full list of potential readings that I offer, different combinations as well. And also, if you are interested in a tarot reading, I also do tarot readings. And speaking of tarot, I also have a tarot channel, which I will be linking in the video description as well as in the pinned comment. So if you're interested in tarot, go ahead and check it out. Maybe subscribe to that channel. I would greatly appreciate it. All right, and last but not least, I have also started memberships on this channel. So if you want to get more details about my membership options on this channel, you can check the video description. I will leave a short introductory video there that basically describes my membership options. All right, so this is for the introduction to my channel. Now, let me get into the topic at hand, which is about the positive sides of Saturn aspects. Now, if you have been on my channel for a long time, maybe you remember that I did a video a while ago that was titled The Truth About Saturn in Relationships, and I basically talked about all the negative, potentially negative implications of Saturn in Synastry. But as I have mentioned in that video, I'm not trying to say, or I wasn't trying to say, that having a lot of Saturn aspects in Synastry, whether in chart interaspects or in the composite chart, that is an overall negative thing. As I have mentioned there, I was mainly exploring the potential pitfalls of having a Saturn dominant relationship, and there are definitely pitfalls, all right? I definitely stand by everything that I said in that video, and there are risks, all right? But as I have mentioned in many other videos, there are always positive and potentially negative expressions of the same aspect all the time, or the same energy, I should say. So in this video, I really want to get into the potential positive sides of having Saturn in Synastry. I was actually thinking about this because for most of the time, most of like the past 10 years or so, I've been into astrology for much longer than the past 10 years, but mostly in the past 10 years, I've focused on Vedic astrology, and I was always sort of cringing when I heard astrologers talk about how important Saturn is in relationships. As I also mentioned in that video, which I, by the way, will be linking in the video description under recommended or related videos. So if you want to check it out, go ahead and watch the video description. So there I explored the potential pitfalls of the Saturn dominant relationships. So meaning relationships where the two people have a lot of Saturn interaspects, especially hard aspects, especially the conjunction, the square, and the opposition. But I don't know whether it's like the transits or whatever is going on right now, because right now Saturn is transiting in conjunction to my Venus, so softer to. But yeah, I don't know, maybe it's the transits or whatever, but I'm starting to really see the importance of Saturn in general, and especially in the readings that I have done relatively recently, and relationships that I've seen, some that have failed, others that have lasted for a long time. And I really started to see the importance of strong Saturn contacts in Synastry. Hello and welcome to. And yeah, I'm going to get straight into it. So mainly I want to say that here's the thing. Saturn, as many of you may know, is about hardships. It's about reality, the hardships of reality, obstacles, frustrations, challenges. It's basically about testing you. This is why Saturn is ruling things like bones, rocks, areas that are very barren, that are difficult to live in, for humans or any other organism. So in other words, Saturn is connected to harshness, coldness, a lot of stress, you know. So when you have strong Saturn in Synastry, on the one hand, you may have less of a desire for romance together. You may have less of a desire for, you know, the embellishments of relationships. Like it's going to be less about going to the movies hand in hand or walking under the cherry trees in blossom. And it's going to be more about practical things. You're going to show your love for one another through being there for each other when the other one is going through tough times. Now, as I have mentioned in that video originally, the downfall, just to put it very shortly, mainly when it comes to having a lot of hard aspects between Saturn and the other person's planets, either in chart interaspects between individual charts or in the composite chart. So the negative part about this is you could get stuck in a rut. This could be a relationship where you basically stay together out of fear, not so much out of a conscious choice or out of love. So there could be a multitude of pitfalls that I also explored in depth in that video, but mainly it has to do with being stuck in a rut, you know, and basically staying together more out of convenience, out of fear of change, out of fears of all kinds, actually. Fear of loss, fear of living alone, all kinds of fears, and that is the pitfall of relationships. On the other hand, of Saturn-dominant relationships, but on the other hand, all right, when you do have strong Saturn aspects, especially the easier aspects, and I would include the conjunction. I would say the conjunction is probably the strongest in this regard, because the conjunction creates this very strong bond, and it's an aspect that can still be very challenging because Saturn is ultimately a malefic. So depending on what the other planet is, there will always be some potentially negative expressions to this aspect. It's not cute and cuddly, right? This is not going to be a soft, fluffy relationship where everything is sugar spice and everything nice. There's going to be an air of seriousness about this connection. There's going to be an air of responsibility, of we are here for something greater than us, right? So it could be like a sense of duty. It could be like this strong desire to just bond with this person without even fully understanding where this urge is coming from. And this is especially true with the conjunction. You can also see to a lesser extent that this is happening, I would say, with the trine and the sextile, and I would say probably along the same lines, the opposition. The opposition is probably third in line when it comes to favorable aspects involving Saturn and Synastry. And I mean, number one is the conjunction. Number two would be trine and sextile on around the same level. And number three would be the opposition, because the opposition gives that kind of seesaw interaction where the two planets have enough in common to attract one another, but they have enough differences to repel and to actually push each other to grow through their differences. The problem is, though, because Saturn is such a malefic, what I have seen oftentimes is that when you have even the opposition, even though the opposition can hold people together for long periods of time, and a square as well, by the way, even though these harder aspects can also act like a, glue between two people and keep them together for long periods of time, they also bring a lot of frustrations, a lot more than the easier aspects. Because again, Saturn in itself is already a malefic energy. It already has to deal with things like fears and limitations and frustrations and things that are not cute and cuddly and fun all the time, right? So when you already have that harsh energy, and on top of that, you mix it with a harsh aspect, you get, double or triple or quadruple, and so on and so forth, levels of frustration and anger and pain and suffering maybe in this connection. There could be all kinds of disagreements, frustrations, and so on and so forth. But with the conjunction, the trine and the sextile, and again, to a kind of on the fence position, I would also include opposition. So basically the square is the worst one. I to some extent would also see the quincunx, but the quincunx is not, to my, according to my opinion, it's not a very strong aspect. I would call it maybe a minor aspect. Maybe I would take it into account if there are other aspects there already, but as a kind of nuance, not as a main aspect, to be honest. And I also would include the semi-sextile there as well. So semi-sextiles are formed between signs that are next to one another. So Aries, for instance, is semi-sextile, Pisces, and Taurus. So just to give you a parenthesis. All right. But when you have the conjunction, when you have the trine, the sextile, there's a lot of a desire to keep this relationship going. There's a lot of feeling of mutual responsibility, mutual commitment. And this is especially true with a conjunction. You're going to see this where you have conjunctions in synastry. I've seen this in relationships that have lasted decades, Now, granted, to quote Teal Swan on this, I don't think that the length of a relationship is exactly a testimony of how successful the relationship is in itself, because as I mentioned also in that video talking about the negative aspects of the Saturn dominant relationship, these contacts can be so strong that people are stuck together for decades, years, decades, you name it, maybe their entire lives, and the relationships in them, in of themselves, let's say, are not that great. They may not be satisfying. There could be a lot of frustrations there. There could even be abuse happening in that relationship, because depending on what other aspects are going on, you could see all kinds of scenarios. But if you have strong conjunctions involving Saturn, there is going to be this very tight glue between these two people where they just find it very hard to let go of one another, and it's really something weird, I would say even karmic, because it's not like any other aspect where you can put your finger on why you want to be with that person, right? So if you would have like a Moon-Mars conjunction, if you would have like a Jupiter-Moon conjunction, let's say, if you have Moon-Mars, for instance, you know that you want to be with this person because you're physically attracted, usually. You want to have kids together, maybe, right? So there's like this very strong physical, sexual attraction, also, emotional attraction. If you have Moon and Jupiter, you could be together because you make each other laugh and you feel at ease around this person. But with Saturn, it could be something where there's just this pure sense of duty. Like you don't even really know why you want to be with this person. You just know that you have to be with this person. There's like a compulsion to it. And I'm, again, mainly talking about the conjunction here. The conjunction is the strongest, definitely. And bear in mind in Vedic astrology, because I've always gotten this question on multiple videos, what constitutes a conjunction? In Vedic astrology, 2 planets or 2 points are in conjunction if they are in the same sign, right? So, of course, there will be degrees of intensity if they are also, no more than 10 degrees apart from one another and in the same nakshatra, and or in the same nakshatra, the conjunction is going to be felt that much more intensely, right? So if it's like a 20 degrees difference, meaning let's say you have Mars in 5 degrees Aries and you have Saturn in 25 degrees Aries, so 20 degrees or above difference, that's going to be a weaker conjunction, but it's still going to be felt at the end of the day, according to Vedic astrology. It's just not going to be as compulsive, not going to be as intense. Or the two people could be much more aware of what is going on in their relationship. That's another thing. I talked about this in a video that I did describing the psychology of aspects, where I said that the tighter the orb is, the more unconscious this aspect is playing out in that relationship. So if you have a conjunction, that is within 2-3 degrees orb, these people really may play out a lot of things unconsciously. Like they could trigger each other on a very basic level of functioning, like psychologically, they could trigger each other on a subconscious level to the point where they don't even realize how they're reacting out of blind spots, that they have with respect to their personalities, to their lack of self-awareness, so on and so forth. So yes, this is the general idea that I wanted to say. So the positives overall about the Saturn aspects, because again, I've gotten into the negatives maybe a little bit more than I should have, are the sense of commitment. See, the problem is that when you don't have Saturn aspects, let me put it like this, and I have seen relationships like this, the two people, as soon as they get into a hardship, right, which inevitably will happen, because this is why Saturn rules reality, the harshness of reality, right? So if you don't have Saturn, as soon as they get into some kind of a hardship, let's say one of them gets sick, one of them loses their job, I don't know, there could be all kinds of things which happen all the time, right? Life gets in the way. You could immediately lose the desire to be with this person, because if you don't have a strong Saturn contact, that's where Saturn comes in handy, right? If you have a strong Saturn contact in Synastry, you're going to have this very strong desire to still stick with this person through thick and thin, you know? You're going to be like, oh, this person lost their job, I'm going to do everything I can to help them, you know? Or they're getting sick, I need to go there and be by their side, you know? And it's, again, sometimes it could even be on a subconscious level where you don't even fully realize why you feel that way. You just have this strong sense of duty towards this person. And this could be particularly true on the part of the person who's the Saturn, if you're talking about chart interaspects. The Saturn person could be the one who has like a strong sense of responsibility and connection towards the planet person or the point person, because it could be, you know, it could be Saturn conjunct someone's south node or north node or their ascendant, for instance, right? So yes, the beauty of these aspects are that they can make people stay together and fight for the relationship and work together. Another thing is, because Saturn rules work, it is the karaka of work. It's connected to, it's the karaka of the dashmansha, I don't know, there are all kinds of pronunciations for it. I call it dasamsha just to keep it simple, meaning the D10 divisional chart. So it is the karaka of the career of the person, the social duties of the person, right? So that's another thing, is when you have strong Saturn aspects in a synastry, it could show to people who are very good at working together, at producing things together. And it doesn't necessarily actually mean literally working together like coworkers or working on a project. It could be, let's say, building a home, you know, but doing it in a way that is very Saturnian, which is baby steps, you know, making a plan, sticking to it. Each person contributes a little bit every day, you know, doing it slow and steady, the way that Saturn likes it, right? Building things that are solid together. I know people who have Saturn, for instance, Mars conjunction in Synastry, and they actually enjoy doing all kinds of practical things together, and they work well together. You know, like I'm talking doing things around the house, for instance, like carpentry or painting or stuff like that. You know, so yeah, I know, which does not sound particularly romantic, but it's stuff that is actually useful and solid in the long term. And yeah, so when you don't have Saturn, as I was trying to say, you run the risk of kind of not feeling motivated to keep that relationship going, not feeling committed for the long term, you know, not feeling that strong sense of commitment. So yes, Saturn promises a baseline of security in a relationship, especially with the conjunction, and especially when you have mutual aspects between, meaning both people's Saturns are activated. So I wanted to look at two potential examples. The first one is my go-to couple. You know, if you've watched other videos of mine, that I've used this couple as an example in all kinds of videos, because they have had a really long-lasting relationship. And again, it's obvious if you look at their synastry, because they have a lot of Saturn contacts. And namely, I'm talking about Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, who were together until he passed away some years ago. I think she's still alive. I'm not 100% sure anymore. Okay. But looking at their synastry overlay, meaning the aspects between each other's individual charts, you can see there that his Jupiter, Ascendant, Mercury, and Venus were conjunct her Saturn and Ascendant. That's another thing. So she already had the Saturn Ascendant conjunction, and he had his Jupiter, Mercury, Venus, all conjunct Saturn. All right. So that's a lot of Saturn energy over there. And also, if you look at it from his perspective, he had his Saturn conjunct her south node, which again is a very binding aspect, particularly when it's conjunct the south node. When it's a north node, it could be in the opposite direction. I actually have done individual videos on both of these aspects, so I will be linking them in the video description if you're curious to find out more about them. I'm talking about Saturn conjunct south node or Ketu, and Saturn conjunct Rahu or north node. So when it's with Ketu, Saturn with Ketu and Synastry, it's a particularly strong binding aspect that has a kind of a karmic implication. So it implies that this is a person that you knew in past lives, and you have some kind of a, either they have a debt towards you or you have a debt towards them to repay. This could literally mean that in a past life, because Saturn actually rules government, it rules servants, actually, and beggars and people who are kind of underprivileged. So if you have Saturn conjunct South Node in Synastry, it could even mean that one of you was the other person's servant or slave in a past life, or maybe you had, or one of you was a representative of the government or the state, and yeah, I don't know. So you could have had some kind of a strong impact on the other person's life, and now you're kind of back to repay the karma to the other person. That's one way to look at it, again, but you don't have to look at it from the perspective of past lives if you're not comfortable with the idea. It suffices to say that, Saturn conjunct South Node is a very binding aspect, and you will see it oftentimes in Synastry of very long-lasting couples. And if you look at the composite chart, they also have Saturn conjunct, they don't have a conjunction. They do have one hard aspect, Saturn square Mars. Let me check, actually. Saturn square Mars, but technically, if you look at it from a Vedic perspective, you also have Saturn aspecting Mercury, Venus, and Sun by third aspect. I'm talking about the special Vedic aspects which exist for certain planets, right? So Saturn aspects the third placement from itself, also aspects the 10th placement from itself. So in this case, you do also have Saturn aspecting Mercury, Venus, and Sun. So there is that binding aspect there. I should have mentioned this. I talked about the trine and the sextile, but I also consider the Vedic aspects, the third and the 10th from themselves, to be kind of like minor aspects that are positive, right? But the problem is that when you have these aspects, these are single-sided aspects. So that means that Saturn is aspecting the planets, but the planets are not aspecting back. Depending on the situation, sometimes they may aspect back, right? Some planets could have that position. But usually it's a one-sided aspect, right? So it's not the same as the tropical aspects of trine and sextile, which are mutual. All right. But in any case, they do also have, in the composite, they have some Saturn going on here, even though Saturn square Mars is actually not a happy aspect to have, especially in the composite, because in the composite, it basically acts like, how should I put it? It acts as if both of them are simultaneously having the Mars-Saturn square in between their individual charts. So it's a particularly frustrating sort of aspect. And I have talked about the Mars-Saturn square in Synastry chart inter-aspects in a different video. And again, I will be linking that in the video description if you want to get more details. I talk about why this is one of the most frustrating aspects to have. Not just the square, the opposition as well, and to a lesser extent, the conjunction as well. Because the conjunction can also express some of the negative side of the aspect. And another couple that, was shorter lived were Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. And I just look at these two couples for, as examples out of curiosity. Both of them were long lasting, but if you look at Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, they have less of a positive connection here. So if you look at their Synastry overlays, you see that her Venus was opposite his Saturn. So the Saturn-Venus opposition is not great. I mean, the conjunction is actually not perfect either, but the opposition would suggest, again, even more of a frustration and issues surrounding Venus not feeling appreciated or loved or made to feel criticized even for her beauty and appearance and made to feel frivolous, right? And another thing is when you look at his chart, you see her Saturn is opposite, again, his moon, Mercury, Mars, and Sun. That is a lot of Saturn aspects, but one important distinction, right? So in Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman's case, they have a lot of conjunctions in the overlays, right? The Synastry overlays. Here we have oppositions, but another important distinctive factor that probably led to the separation, and I have also mentioned them in that video where I talked about Rahu conjunct Saturn and Synastry. So another important decisive difference is the fact that they have the Rahu conjunct Saturn aspect as opposed to Ketu conjunct Saturn, which Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman had. So yeah, I talked about these aspects more in depth in separate videos, so I will be linking them in the video description if you want to check them out more in detail. And in the composite chart, let's see, in the composite chart, you also have, you have a minor aspect here with Saturn sextile Moon. And you have a harsh aspect again with the opposition. So Venus is opposite Saturn again, which is a pretty frustrating aspect to have, really, especially in the composite chart, because Venus is about, sugar, spice, and everything nice. And in the composite chart, this would show again that both of them could have taken turns in feeling like the Venus person and the Saturn person at different times, right? So both of them could have felt like the other person was not really appreciating them. Maybe they didn't feel loved enough. Maybe they felt like they were being criticized or made to feel like they were frivolous. So there could be all kinds of different interpretations of this, Venus to Saturn aspect, hard aspects, to be specific, right? But still, again, even with the negative aspects, you would expect to see Saturn connecting people on a deeper level and creating this sense of responsibility and bonding, which happened in their relationship. It was a very long-lasting relationship, to be honest. And also considering the fact that they have the Rahu-Saturn conjunction in inter-aspects, it makes it even more impressive. But eventually it did end, and I'm sure that these aspects also had a part to play, because if Saturn has hard aspects, there's a lot of erosion that is happening over there. There's a lot of maybe little things, not big explosive fights, but a lot of little things that are adding up. That's another problem, though, and I don't know if I mentioned this in the other video, but with Saturn, especially with the hard aspects happening in the Synastry and the composite, there could be a lot of built up frustration because the two people have a hard time opening up, because Saturn can create this attitude of coldness, a feeling of not fully understanding the other person, and this is in its worst expression, especially, like I said, with a lot of hard aspects, which create a lot of frustration. On the positive side, though, if you have positive aspects with Saturn and Synastry, again, both overlays and composite, you could have more respect between two people. See, that's a potential upside in the sense that, because the two people feel like they cannot fully, how should I put it, let their guard down around, maybe that doesn't sound nice, because it sounds like, it could even get to the point where one person feels like they cannot be vulnerable around the other. And again, this is especially true with the hard aspects. With the easy aspects, it could go either way, depends on what else is going on in Synastry. But the positive side is that people give each other space. I've seen this where, where you have, for instance, Saturn conjunctions and trines and sextiles, people could be like, I don't fully understand you, or we don't like the same things, but I'm going to give you space to be yourself, So because Saturn is kind of like that cold, detached sort of energy, again, there are pluses and minuses. Like I said, there are pluses and minuses to everything. So you may not be bound at the hip with this person. You know, you may not be dancing to the same tunes and completing each other's sentences, but you're going to have, you know, a solid partner who is reliable, dependable, and can give you space when you need it, you know, can just accept that, all right, this is your territory, this is my territory, and we can agree to disagree, you know, that kind of thing. Which on some level to other people can seem like cold and formal, right? But others, depending on what else is going on in Synastry, they can really enjoy it. And in fact, I have also mentioned this in this other video, that a lot of how these aspects will play out and whether the relationships are going to be successful or not, also depends on the individual charts. You know, it depends on how each person sees relationships and what they seek in relationships, you know. What are their partner archetypes? What is their Darakaraka? What is the 7th house lord doing? For instance, if you see, like, funny enough, you know, if you look again at Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman, as I mentioned, Joanne Woodward already had Saturn in the 1st house, looking at her 7th house, right? So also aspecting the 7th house, which is the house of marriage. So already having Saturn in the 1st house and aspecting the 7th, this shows that this person values stability, Saturnian kind of energies, right? Stability, security, someone who's reliable, and maybe not a lot of fancy stuff, not a lot of embellishments, but, you know, someone who's going to be there when the going gets tough, you know. And on the other hand, you know, if you would have we would have a person who doesn't have any Saturn aspecting the 7th or the 5th houses, which are the houses of love and romance and marriage, maybe this person would hate a Saturn dominant relationship. They would get really bored, you know, they would get like, I want to have excitement and fireworks and I don't know, weekends in Paris or something, you know, like, and they would not appreciate, let's say, a Saturn dominant relationship. This is what I'm trying to say, you know, so you always have to look at the full picture is what I'm trying to say. All right, so this is pretty much the video, and I hope that you have enjoyed it. And if you have, do not forget to like the video. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications bell if you want to be notified when I post a new video. Also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there, and you can email me for a full list of pricings and reading options and payment options and all kinds of details. And also, I have started memberships on this channel, and if you want to check out more details about the memberships, also check out the video description. I will leave a link to a short video there about more details. All right, so thank you for listening once again, and yeah, I hope to see you at my next video.